Welcome back to our post-Gen Con content. We won't be doing too much more of this. We did get some games at Gen Con that we'll probably be doing some content for. But this here is where we talk about all of the exciting things that happened at Gen Con. I don't even know how many things we're going to talk about. So I'm sure there was a number somewhere in the thumbnail. That's how many.
That's our goal. We'll consider that a goal to talk about.
That's our goal. We have a lot of things to talk about. We wanted to get together, Ryan, Nelson, myself. Emily, again, did not want to be a part of... She doesn't anticipate games, nor does she like talking about what we enjoyed. No, I'm just kidding. Emily just couldn't be here. And Jeremy, of course, is in Milwaukee. But the three of us are here to talk about events, games, things, surprises, something like Lorcana, that happened at Gen Con that was just sort of some of the stuff that brought Gen Con back to its height.
That's what I was going to lead with and say that Gen Con feels back.
Yeah, 100%.
Yes, I mean, it's been a pandemic, and even like last year, we kind of wondered what direction Gen Con was going to go. This was, being said, the biggest Gen Con ever. People were saying over 70,000 attendees, which I believe is even more than we had at the 50th anniversary or even in 2019.
Yeah, they've since announced after the show that officially 70,000, a little over 70,000, which I think is the number they batted around in 2019, which was the last big year. To me, it felt like even more than that.
Oh, yeah.
It felt more, yeah.
I mean, I've seen photos. We've been there at 10 a.m. when the doors have opened in the past.
Oh, yeah.
I have never seen a Thursday like what we had this year.
Or Friday or Saturday.
Every day felt bigger and more crowded, and it was intense, very intense. In fact, to the point where it didn't feel super safe at all times. Because normally there's not that big of a like Thursday's big, but that whole hallway was filled with people. It didn't help that we had people waiting for the doors to open. We had people waiting for Lorcana product. We had several lines, and a lot of people didn't know which line they were supposed to get in. If Gen Con continues to grow, they need to better manage that, because you couldn't even really walk through that hall on Thursday morning.
It was intense.
That is true. And they did do a better job of managing it. And part of the big issue on day one anyway was Lorcana, because that was kind of, dare I say, mismanaged on day one. They learned from that day and kind of shifted gears considerably, because the days following, they had a much more organized system in place. It was still a very long line, and that's what we're going to start talking about. And we've got Nelson here. And Ryan and I weren't in that line. Nelson,
I was in it twice.
No, but
Nelson was in it twice.
I cheated a little bit because I had friends that did wait in line. I had my friend from the channel Camp Cardboard that waited in that long line. You waited in that long line. So we got the benefit of playing Lorcana.
Playing it, borrowing
playing
it.
it.
We don't have it in our grubby little hands.
For me, that's enough. I'm just glad to play it. I'm glad that I'm happy for Nelson, because we got a great photo of Nelson walking out with his pack. So
very excited.
Nelson, what did you get? And you said it was 2 days.
It was 2 days, yeah. So on Thursday, I was part of that initial rush. It was chaotic. It did feel unsafe. I'm a pretty big guy, and I was not moving under my own control. I was getting pushed around. And so it was intense. There was not a lot of communication on what exactly we were supposed to do. I went and got in the turnstile lines on the outside and sat down and didn't move for 2 hours. And so that was also kind of frustrating, because no one really knew what was happening. But good news is that by the time I got it there, they were sold out of most everything. And so
that's the good news.
That was the good news.
Well, so they had booster boxes.
Yeah.
They were still selling those, and most product was limit one per show. And the way that they were managing that is they were cutting off a corner of your badge. And so when I got there, since they were out of so much stuff, and since it was such a kind of mismanaged opening, they had stopped cutting badges, and so I was able to get back in the line on Saturday at about 6:45 a.m.
Wow.
Well,
so the first day you got a box of boosters?
I got a box of boosters. Yeah.
Oh, nice. And then you got a second box of boosters?
I got a second box of boosters, and then the starter decks as well.
Oh, nice.
Getting in line at 6:45 a.m. is a gamble, considering people were lined up at 6 o'clock p.m.
Yep.
The night before.
Which was wild. Gen Con's always kind of a late night con for us. You're up all night playing games. Sometimes we don't get to bed until 2 a.m.
This one, anyway.
And when I was heading back, we walked through the hall, and there was 12 to 15 people camping out
overnight
for Friday, or like I think it was Thursday night they instituted that.
Yep.
Yeah.
For Friday morning.
Yep.
It was like 12 to 15 people. Wait, now a bunch of people showed up at 6 a.m. and still got product. So I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, well,
I don't know how that line, if that line was worth it.
and
but.
the line every day, from what I understand, we had another friend who I think either went Friday or Saturday, and they got in the line, they got through the line, and they were pretty far back in line
Still
too.
took them several hours to get.
But it
through
took
that
them
line,
about
too.
4 hours to get it. How much time did you burn?
So on Thursday, I got in line, or I got in, I guess, the blob of people.
Yeah, it wasn't quite a line.
Around 8, and I checked out at 12:30.
Oh, well.
And then on Saturday, when I got in line at 6:45, I checked out at 11:30.
Okay.
I mean, I get it. I 100% get it, and I'm glad that I got to be part of that hype, and I got to play Lorcana.
It was fun.
The first day. It was fun to watch. I'm okay waiting a couple weeks.
And yeah, that
to be honest.
It was part of the excitement and thrill for me a little bit, and now I have.
If Lorcana, I'm not saying it's gonna, because card games live and die over the years. But if this is the next Magic, and in 10 years you're like, hey, I was there.
Yeah.
I was there for the Gen Con Stampede of 2023. Like,
yeah.
And if you still have your unopened boosters at that point,
no, they've already all.
He did open one of them anyway.
Yeah,
right?
no. So I have one box that I've opened, one box that's staying, and then I've not opened all the boosters. I'm like treating myself as like Pavlov's dog. Every time I do something and complete a task, I open a booster.
I would rip through those in a minute.
Some of those early Magic the Gathering boosters are worth a lot of money now.
Yeah.
So
well, speaking of that,
speculative market.
all this stuff was going for a quite tidy sum on eBay. In fact,
it was crazy.
Oh, yeah.
we did also find out, I don't think everyone was aware of this the first day, or they were at least the second day. You could just go to the Ravensburger booth at any point during the day and buy anything, and you would get the Mickey Mouse promo that they were handing
selling those
out.
for like $100
and
online.
people were selling for more than that the first day.
I had a friend who got out of line, got his box, posted it on eBay, and somebody messaged him and said, I will show up with $300. I'm at Gen Con. They bought it for him $300 cash.
Wow.
The market for Lorcana, like, it was crazy.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like that at Gen Con. Ever. Like, we've seen some big releases, and we've seen some sellouts, which we'll transition to here in a second, but never a line that waits overnight.
Oh no.
That's
This was the first time, or maybe the second time, Gen Con's ever allowed people to line up before the dealer hall even opens.
What was the first time?
I don't know. I heard that there was,
because I've never been.
I've never seen it.
I've never seen anything like this. This line went the length of the hall outside of the event
looped.
hall.
It was crazy.
Yeah, and had a turnstile.
Yeah,
it was
had
crazy.
a turnstile. It was insane.
But
They had armed security guards.
Yeah, they did. They had
Ravensburger.
Private security they hired.
That's crazy.
Now, all the booths didn't hire private security, but a lot of the booths also ended up having lines. Maybe not so much that first morning, but every day thereafter. I think it was Saturday, I remember. I was in there during the doors opening, and I was right next to the capstone booth, which was also right kind of behind the restoration booth, and also next to the Inside Up booth. All of them had people rushing to those booths to get in a line to get Earth, which I found interesting since Earth is mostly available, I think. But people were just kind of into the hype of it all. Restoration had Thunder Road, that edition that you can't just get anywhere. And then Capstone had Age of Innovation. And those were just 3 of the booths.
Well, yeah, I was going to say,
so many booths had stuff selling out.
Beyond that, it was a weird year because, when you would go booth to booth, now a lot of companies were smart and they were doing daily allocations. Yeah. So some of the big games that I was hearing everybody talk about was Sky Team, and then General Orders were both huge games, and they had little allocations, and like they would sell in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
The Lost Ruins of Arnak expansion, they said the first day was sold out in like 15 minutes.
Yeah, but they weren't
sold out.
They weren't even tiny allocations. Like in the past,
these were huge.
People would bring allocations, and I remember some people selling 25 a day. This was like, these games we're talking about, they had like 150, 200 that they were selling a day.
It was significant.
And that's a fair amount of con copies to bring.
Yeah. On Friday, I was going to go get in the line for Sky Team, and I made the unfortunate decision to stop and drop something off of my buddy at a different booth. When I got there, like, no, we're out.
Yeah.
It was like
I'll tell you,
10:03.
we've always gotten to kind of have a little bit of an advantage when it comes to cons because we get to go in as exhibitors, right? We get to go in a little early, and some places will kind of let you shop. And in the past, it's not really been a big deal. But even like SkyTeam, they were like, if you have a blue exhibitor badge, we're not selling it to you.
Yeah, and
like,
that's honestly the
and that's
way.
good. I don't think
the
that's
way
bad.
they
Let
should
the
do
fans
it.
get it.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've ever seen a product that was so hot that I don't think like they could have brought as much SkyTeam as they could have possibly physically brought.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and they would have sold out of all of it.
That is
That's
true.
Crazy.
Some other notable sellouts, they had My Island there, which, again, before the show, we weren't sure whether they were going to have it there for sale, but they did.
Yep.
That sold out. They also had Dorfromantic, which sold out. Emerge from Pandasaurus.
Sold out twice.
I think what happened, a lot of people actually sold out of all their inventory and then actually had people arranged for, or they themselves drove to their warehouses within sort of the Midwest region and drove back more, which is really exciting. And like I was about to say, I think a lot of this too, all these games deserve to sell out. There's a lot of really exciting games. But I think once one game sells out and then another game sells out, everyone's just in this mode of like, oh, what? Like it's kind of that FOMO sets in, and the consumerism takes over, and everyone just wants to buy.
Well, yeah, I know Capstone had to drive. Theirs was a couple hours into Ohio, and they drove back to get more product too.
Yeah,
I heard of people driving up as far as Chicago, Fort Wayne. So it was crazy.
So anyway, capitalism at its finest. Everyone was buying things, but there was also a lot of things going on that were just a lot of fun that didn't necessarily require you to purchase anything.
Oh, that's true. Well, strange. I didn't see as much demo space as I think I've seen in years past, but there were still definitely a lot of games available to demo.
Yeah.
But I'm used to seeing, like Asmodee last year had a huge
Asmodee in the past, I think that's one of the big differences. Asmodee in the past, and not just last year, but even in past years, most of Asmodee's booth is just a massive sea of all the different brands that they represent with just demo tables.
Yeah.
And then they usually have one small area where you can just go in and buy.
Right.
That felt, and I don't know if they're so big that they're so spread out that you can't get a flavor for that it being all Asmodee, but it didn't feel like there was as much demo space. There were some booths that did a pretty good job and prioritized it. I know the Op had a lot of demo tables. Pandasaurus had a few.
Well,
so some had more than others.
Joyride had a whole booth for demoing Joyride.
Yes, but it was just a table of Joyride.
Right,
yes, it was a smaller booth, but Joyride, it was dedicated. That was all they were doing there, was just playing 2 demos of Joyride.
Well, and I noticed too a lot of demos were happening in other places. Like they were happening in the events hall or even in like some of the hotel spaces, and you'd go to the booth and say, I want to demo this. They'd have you set up for a time. Like I did this for Galactic Tour. I went to their main booth. And
Galactic Cruise?
Galactic Cruise. Galactic Tour.
He wants to go to Star Wars and Disney.
I was going to say, that's the Star Wars ride. Galactic Cruise, I went to their booth because I really Jeremy Howard's been talking this game up. They said this feels like a Lacerda game. So I didn't want to leave without playing it. And they actually had me sign up for a slot and go somewhere else and meet them and play Galactic Cruise. And well, that was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Ended up being one of my picks from the con. Like that game, it was just really good. I don't know if you guys even got the chance to look at it or play it, but man, it has one of the most evocative covers. Ian O'Toole did that.
It is
artwork.
A really cool piece of art. It is a really well done piece of art.
I cannot wait.
I'm a sucker for a good drop shadow, and they have a beautifully executed drop shadow on that box.
White box, cool artwork, right?
Yeah.
Like it looks really cool. But the game is really good, and like it was a prototype. So I'm just seeing their prototype artwork, but they're talking to me about like what Ian O'Toole is doing with the artwork and some of the iconography, and I'm just like, cannot wait to see what the final version of that looks like. But getting to play that was definitely a highlight.
Yeah, I have a prototype I want to talk about, but Nelson, I want to check in with you. Were there any demos you did that were kind of high on your...
Yes. I took your advice.
Let me guess. No, go ahead.
I demoed Witcher Old World.
Yes. Oh, was that your first time playing it?
Yeah,
it was. And it was so good. It was so much fun. I enjoyed it a lot. We played like 2 rounds, and so we got to see some fights. We got to see a Witcher fight, but we got to interact with the game, and it was like a free demo, but kind of the demoer kind of pushed us into like, let's have some Witchers fight this round to kind of like see all the aspects of the game. But I know, that's been talked about on the channel
Yeah,
before.
well,
but
it's
a
a couple
good
times.
game.
It's been talked about on the channel so much that the designer of Witcher: The Old World, who was at Gen Con, hunted us down to talk to us about how much we love Witcher: The Old World.
Yeah.
So it's
And
definitely known.
And one of those people was the person who demoed the game for
Oh,
you,
really?
right?
Was that
Yeah.
Lucas?
Oh
Like
no,
Lucas?
Not
they
Lucas.
no,
Okay.
it was one of the Asmodee demos.
Gotcha.
Oh, it was okay.
But yeah, no, it was a phenomenal demo. It was a good game. I'm
Nice.
looking forward to it.
Yes.
Hook,
Great
line,
game.
and sinker.
Another one.
So the demo we had, this is probably one of the big highlights for us as a group, and it started the show off for us. And we did some content on it. It was Horror on the Orient Express. This one's coming from Chaosium. And oh boy, this game.
It's cool.
It is Adam Kwapinski and
Goem.
Goem. He simply goes by Goem.
Michael, I think. Anyway.
Yeah, but he simply goes by Goem.
Yeah.
The two of them, he was from the designer. He was one of the designers on Destinies, and Adam Kwapinski, of course, from Nemesis and other games fame.
Tons of other games.
This is a co-op survival game, and I mean survival because you're on this train and all hell is breaking loose. And we died very quickly in this game.
No, we were about halfway to our destination. We got about halfway.
But we hadn't done anything we needed to do. The destination
That's
ends
why we
it
died.
too, but we
died.
This is a very, very difficult game that I think is going to be one of those games that you have to play probably 3 times, maybe even before you have a chance of figuring out, like, okay, I think we know what we need to do here. But the table presence is awesome because there's this actual little train. You're moving miniatures around the train, and then all the passengers, or a lot of the passengers, are represented by these die. You don't roll them, but the die have different faces that represent the different sort of moods or statuses or emotional states of those passengers. They could be frightened, they could be angry, they could be confused or crazy, because it's a Cthulhu-based thing. There's madness going on. The train cars actually have these little windows that open and close.
That's so cool.
And as the train moves down the track and you see scenery outside that is maddening, if the windows are open, it might have an effect on the passengers in the train.
That's really cool.
And you're closing windows. Ryan was opening windows, punching monsters, and having them fall off the train.
I was the gunslinger. So the game to me, and I said this to them, and I think it made their day. I called it Unfathomable on a Train, which it is. And they said that is what they were going for.
Yeah.
I like it better than Unfathomable because there is no hidden traitor. So you're not trying to deduce who the hidden traitor is. However, there's a bunch of NPCs, non-player character tokens on the board that are all linked to individual character boards. And there's some secret information. And some of them are traitors.
Some amount. You don't even know how many.
So you're still trying to deduce who the traitor is.
Or cultists.
Cultists. And yes. You're still at that level of deduction of like, I think it might be this. But it's not the other players. It's fully cooperative. And so I think that's going to be a huge draw for some people that just want to play a fully cooperative
Yeah, that
game.
was a nice way to kick things off.
Yeah.
We did that I think in their hotel lobby.
Yep.
And we played a full game of it. I mean, it went quickly because we died. I think if you win that game, it's probably going to be a 2 to 3 hour game.
We struggled.
But that was something else.
I got to play a cool prototype that I can't talk about, so I'm really not gonna. However, I am allowed to say this. I played a new game from David Turtzi, who's designed a lot of stuff, and I will say this is
compelling.
This is a very, very cool game, and I'm very excited to talk about it more in the future. But it really was a highlight. Getting to called out and be like, I really want you to see this because I think you'll like it, kind of thing. I did also get to demo Nucleum at Board and Dice's booth, which is Brass meets Barrage in the best way possible.
Sounds heavy. We do have
very heavy.
We were lucky
game.
enough to walk away with a copy, so we will have more content, in-depth content on that coming sometime in the near future.
Yeah, those were the major things that I demoed, and I wish I could say more about Turtzi's game, but he knows where I live, so I'm not going to do it.
So one more game I want to talk about, and Nelson and I can talk about this a little bit more. In fact, we're going to talk about it in another video, so we'll just touch on it here. But Ryan, you can just act like the audience and ask us some questions, perhaps. Is Altered. Altered is a TCG coming at least to the U.S. through distribution by Asmodee, but it's from a company called Equinox that is founded by the designer of Seasons.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this a little bit in some of our pre-con coverage. we got a chance to actually play it. We saw a ton of it. And they shared a lot about their very ambitious
That's one way to put it.
ideas
Yeah.
I would call it very ambitious to start.
for bringing this game to market. So what it is a TCG. I think the biggest hook for me, and these guys play more of these than I do, but the biggest hook in terms of gameplay was has a very interesting win condition where you have these two pieces, a hero and a companion, and you're trying to move them across this track to meet. And the track itself is discovered as you play. You flip these cards to find out, okay, so for this guy to move forward, it has to be green. So you have to win on one of these three sort of like terrain types.
Yeah.
What did they call them? Expeditions, right?
Yeah.
To advance. So if you don't win on green, you're not moving forward if you have to move forward on green. But that's one side of your play space. You could play over here. So there's two spaces to play, kind of like Star Wars Unlimited, another game we all played there. So I could try to move my companion instead of my hero, or maybe try to move both. Whoever has them meet wins the game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a lot more to how they're rolling this out, though.
Yeah. And just to follow up a little bit, I did a video talking about this, and I talked so much, and when I told people about this game, like, I realized that I've been rambling for like 25 minutes.
Yeah, he warned us before we recorded this. He said, I might just keep talking, so just pinch me if I need to.
We need one of those old like canes to pull us off.
Because the thing that most excites me is the app that they're building for it, which is how they're rolling it out. And I always have to say, the gameplay was awesome. I really enjoyed the gameplay, but I talk so much about the app, which is kind of digital ownership of the cards. So every single card in Altered, you'll scan and you'll own it digitally. And now you can print it and you can have as many copies as you want. If you have 5 different decks that use this card, they have print on demand centers where you can just go into the app and say, I want 5 of these, and they ship them to your house. And that just blows my mind.
Yeah, it'd be nice if Marvel Champions had that.
Right? Yeah, I would love that.
Like, I want this in every single deck, and I've got 10 decks that could use 2 of these cards. Yeah, you don't want to go buy the $14 pack 6 times to get those cards.
Yeah.
I mean, that could, as long as it works.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
so there's a lot.
the way they're saying.
In this day and age, when you bring up digital ownership, people start getting a little skeptical. And I think we went in separate sessions. And I can speak for my session. There was a lot of people that were well-versed in trading card games. Mm-hmm. They had meetings with a lot of retailers. They had meetings with some really hardcore Magic the Gathering influencers. I am not one of those. So I represented the much more casual side of the audience that they're targeting. But there was a lot of skepticism and a lot of really hard-hitting questions in our session. And they had, at least according to the responses and the reactions to those responses in my session, some pretty good answers for some of the questions that were coming up in terms of like, well, how are you going to handle this? What about this? Is the secondary market destroyed here? Because like, how are stores going to respond to this? And they've taken they've spent a lot of time thinking about this. Mm-hmm. These are very intelligent people. That's one thing I walked away with when I demoed this game. And we did get a chance to actually demo it. And then we sat and talked about this. But the digital rights thing is really cool because I could buy a card from someone in Japan and you're buying it through the app. And I could have it printed on demand and have it shipped to me probably that week. And then that person, like the first question in my mind is like, well, that person still has the card, right? They do, but they can't use the card if they don't have the digital rights in official tournaments. Recreationally, go crazy.
Right, and I think that's a cool thing because it lets casual players have access to the whole card pool.
Yeah.
If you just want to play for fun at your game store, whatever, but if you want to play at the tournament level, that's effectively what you're owning. You're owning the right to play that card in a tournament. So casual play, they don't like whatever. Have fun with it. Do whatever you want. Give it to all your friends. It's fine. But then the second you want to enter a tournament, it's like your deck is verified. As long as it works and as long as there's a market for it and as long as the competitive scene keeps it alive, which it sounds like they have a plan.
Yep.
I say even aside from any of that, like you said, the gameplay itself was refreshing to me. It was very different than most. It didn't feel very combative. Even though you were kind of competing on these fronts, the win condition didn't feel like I'm taking your hit points
It was a
away.
race.
It's a race.
Like Lorcana is very
Yeah.
much like that too.
Yeah.
Lorcana is very much. It's interesting how there's a lot of similarities there, and then of course like with Lorcana and Star Wars, there's some similarities, and all three of them kind of coming out within the same time frame is very interesting.
It is a big resurgence that we're seeing, and I think this Gen Con was a big kickoff point for that because it launched Lorcana. People got hands-on with Star Wars Unlimited, which is going to be coming out next year, and then Altered, which was shown to a much more limited audience, but also a very exciting thing.
Well, we had new Keyforge out. We had new Flesh and Blood is growing in popularity. I got to see some card games, some CCGs that are coming out next year. So like it's a huge resurgence. This feels like back in the mid '90s when there was like a CCG for everything.
Yeah.
So I think the last thing we want to talk about, or at least the last thing I want to talk about, and probably the most important thing that happened at all of Gen Con, everyone was talking about it. It's the MVM dinner that happened Saturday night.
Yeah, everybody was talking about how hot it was.
Everyone was talking about how hot it was and how long we had to wait for our food.
Because for the second year in a row, the place that we went to
didn't have air.
Lost their AC like the day before we were supposed to go there.
And to be fair, they didn't lose all of their AC, but it seemed to be just our private dining room. Because as soon as you walked out of our private dining room, it was nice and cool. But our private dining room was a little hot. We had to wait a little extra long for our food. However, it was a good time. And if you're around next year, join us. We'll have all those things ironed out.
Yeah. Well,
be a much better event.
Not to like be so sappy or whatever, but when we first conceptualized this dinner, we thought maybe we'd get 20 to 30 people.
Well, last year we had like 18 people.
Last year we had like 18, so we're like maybe we'll get 20 to 30, and we instantly surpassed that. And so we had to like figure out a place to go. We ended up finding a place that could hold 60, and then we thought, okay, well, and then we hit that number instantly.
Yeah,
and we had to turn, and we were like, wow, okay.
We had to turn some people away. It was a really good problems to have.
Right. So thank you for everybody that was so interested. And next year we'll try to do something that can host an indeterminate number.
1 million people.
70,000.
It will be. It will be everyone at Gen Con. No, but thank you for those of you watching who came. It was really nice getting to know you. But yeah, hopefully we'll grow upon it next year and have even more people. But it was a good time. We don't get a lot of opportunities to kind of like hang with our community other than like on our Discord. And to put a lot of those faces with names was awesome.
Well, I got to say too, this year also kind of felt back when I felt like it was back to Gen Con when it came to like social events. Because I really enjoy that. I really enjoy being able to take a step back from Gen Con and just chill with people that we know or people that we're friends with.
That's your favorite thing.
That is my favorite thing. I did some meals with people that turned out really great.
Opportunity to party.
But then we had our social. There was the Be Creative social that Matt Paquette's Be Creative put on with Daryl Andrews, which was a great opportunity to like network with people and help other people network. All the parties, like the launch parties for Emerge with Panasaurus. There was a launch party for Cosmoctopus.
Every publisher. I have never seen so many publishers doing a thing.
Which was
like
cool.
In the past, it was usually just a couple, and it was usually just the big ones, like Asmodee and stuff like that. This year, so many of them had events, and like there's what was it, Wednesday night? There was so many on top of each other.
Yeah, we bounced
like
from a couple.
3 or 4 events that were all on top of each other. It was just quite a Gen Con for sure.
Well, I set aside a lot of time for that Be Creative social, and I only want to talk a little bit about it just because I think what they're doing is great. Because the whole premise of the social, and if you didn't see it online, look for it next year. If you are an up-and-coming designer or you just want to work in the board game industry at any level, we had people there that were just like in finance or marketing, sales.
This sounds exciting.
But it's a
if you want to go to Gen Con and talk about finance and maybe accounting.
When people think about working in the board game industry, what do they think about? They think about being an artist for board games or being a designer of board games. Yeah. But being a sales manager or being a financial manager for a board game company, how do you meet the people that make those decisions? Sure. Mm-hmm. And so they did this as a chance for brand new people in the industry to meet all of these different publishers, not just to pitch games, but also to pitch like, this is what I'm good at. These are my skills. Is there a future in your company? And I saw a lot of connections being made.
That's really
cool.
And
I was going to shout this out because this is the coolest thing.
I'm just going to tell you, hold on for a second.
Really
I'm going to tell you right now, Ryan,
I'm a sucker for these gimmicks.
This is the coolest thing he saw at Gen Con.
No, I'm a sucker for these gimmicks. One of the guys, Jack, instead of handing out business cards, he was handing out posters. And this poster is a print and play for his game. It's got the board and all the components that you can snip out and a QR code for the rules. I just thought that was so creative.
That is really fun.
I like
is
seeing things like that.
Creative. I will agree that it's creative. No offense, Jack, if you're watching.
I think it's very cool, and they might be watching. You never know.
Yeah.
But it was really cool, and like it made an impact. Like I will remember this moment where I'm like,
I'll certainly
Okay.
remember it.
it's cool. And the game is good too. But yeah, like I like seeing that level of creativity in the industry. It was just a cool event, and of course, please come to the MVM. Social.
Yes,
This was a ton of
definitely.
fun.
Definitely come. Nelson was there.
I was.
Whoa. Did you hear that? It was like an echo. But honestly, he was there. He was one of the highlights of the event, I think. No, but it was good. We gave away stuff. It was good. Come next year.
We gave away so much
if you're
stuff.
at Gen Con. We did give away a copy of Frosthaven. It was unfortunate because we were using it to prop open the window to let some of the cool air in. But it was eventually, it did find a good home. Anyone have any other thing they want to mention?
I mean,
No,
I
you're
got
not
it
allowed.
was great. It was a great Gen Con.
It was a fantastic Gen Con. It felt exciting to be there with so many people and meeting so many people, and of course,
Did you point to us? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
He'd never
MVM
met us
dinner was
before.
amazing.
He met the real us at Gen Con, I think is what he meant to say. No, but it was a good time. If you have any questions about Gen Con, I'm sure you don't at this point because we've just covered, I think, about everything.
Yeah, that's
Or you don't want to hear us
that
talk
was
anymore.
all that happened at Gen Con.
No. Please make them in the comments below, though. We'll continue the conversation if you'd like us to. Until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.